Hi everyone, Dr. Schwandt here with Dreaming Big, and we're here again in Kensington, Kansas, and my guest today is another special guest. I think everyone here in Kensington, I could probably say, introduce a special guest, but Mr. Bruce VanLoenen. Mr. VanLoenen was a teacher, a coach, a mentor, just about everything that you'd want in like a father figure and a mentor, and thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Jamie.
So we'll start out as we do with them all. So tell us a little bit about yourself, then we'll get into the fun stuff.
Okay.
So.
Well, just like earlier, you had Coach Weens on, and I didn't realize that him and myself had basically the same path. Right out of college, came to Kensington as our first job. He stayed a little longer than I did. I stayed in Kensington for 11 years, very, very fortunate to get to come to this community. You know, they opened their arms and allowed me to come in, and was able to stay here for 11 years, and then I moved back to where our family roots are. We moved back to the Hill City area, so still try to stay in pretty good touch with some of the folks around Kensington that, you know, kind of helped guide me along a little bit, I guess you would say, early on.
Yeah, and well, you definitely, we've been talking a lot about having the impact. I mean, I just think of so when I wrote the children's book, Finding Your Hero, and I made sure it was difficult to some of the people, you know, so you only put so many people on the cover or in the book, and so I was thinking, like, how do I put all the coaches together? And so that's why I gave you the fun little tights and everything, and the superhero top, so I could get Mr. VanLoenen, a Mr. Letcher, a Mr. Weens, and Mr. Yoxel, and everyone kind of compiled into that one. And I know we were talking a little bit earlier about your different leadership styles, that you all have, and how I like to joke about yours, because you were in your face, like you're not doing what you're supposed to do in your face, but we respected that. And the other ones, like Mr. Weens, had the more just he had the aura of just being Mr. Weens.
Yeah.
Then you had the nice guy, and Mr. Brearley. You can't say anything bad about
Right.
upset him. And then Mr. Letcher, kind of combination of them all. But you guys had such a profound impact on, I know, everyone that went through my class at least, and I mean, you guys we still talk about you all. So.
Well, that's one thing, as being teacher / coach, like Mr. Weens being an administrator, things like that. That's the things that you hope as a coach or a teacher or a mentor, like you mentioned earlier, that you have a positive impact. That was one of my goals is, you're not going to reach everybody, but try your darndest to do the best that you can. And, there's certain people you just can't reach them, but, for the most part, hope I made a good impact, and that was one of the things I strived to do.
So when I think about my time here, and I know we were talking before the show about the structure, and I think that's probably the biggest thing, one of the biggest things you probably add, and I'm sure you have it in your family. Maybe take yourself through, like, remembering of interaction with me or anyone kind of like me, like, how did you go about it? Was it just kind of natural to, in your face structure, and then, because we respected the heck out of it, I guess, how did you come up with that? Or
I guess a lot of structure probably came from my upbringing. My dad was all about structure. You didn't step out of line, and I think I kind of, that was pretty well impacted into me. And, there were kids like yourself. When you came in, we were like, wow, that kid just get out of prison,
I think a lot of people thought that.
But, you were in a situation when you came here that, you needed that structure, and whether it was in your face or the coddling type of structure, you had it in the back of your mind. You could just see that, you needed that structure. And there's kids all over, I don't care if it's in Kensington, Kansas, but all over the United States that need structure in their day, and they need that guidance. And, I think, I'll just use you for example. It might be in the hallway during the day. You might need a little structure. Hey, Jamie, how's the grades going today? Kind of like Dieter talked earlier in her interview about your ACT test. Well, we know where you've came to now, but, every kid needs that structure, but every kid needs it in a different format. And you responded to all different types of structure formats, and and I think that goes into tell with every kid. Some kids can't take a lot of different types of structure. Yourself, I think you could have took a lot of variety to where the next kid, would just have to meet their structure needs. But I think every kid out there, whether they're in a foster care system or just the kids that are coming through every day, they need some type of structure and guidance.
And I think as I've been talking to different people, and I think it all comes down to one thing, at least for me, like all the different variety of styles and that we've been talking about. If there was one thing that they didn't have, I could find it, and it was if I didn't respect that person, then I'd tune them out, and I still to this day tune them out. But if I respected them, all those styles helped. And obviously the ones that I still interact with, I respect the heck out of. And I think that respect piece of as Mr. Weens, talking the talk, and that's what the important piece was. And I think that's what now, I can try to take all these different varieties and try to use them as well, and that's what the fun part is. And although I don't know how you become a Mr. Beerley or Mr. Weens, so
Yeah.
I could just say God is good a whole bunch of times, and that still isn't going to work, right?
Yeah.
But we'll take a brief commercial break, and when we come back, I want to bring up a story that I remember when I was a sophomore. Donald Dodds and I quit the basketball team, and I remember how disappointed I was. I want to talk about that and see if you remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after commercial break.
Okay.
So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to Dreaming Big, and I have Mr. Bruce VanLoenen here, and we were talking before the break a little bit. I shared a story about being a student here, and I think it was my sophomore year. Our large class in Kensington, the whole 15 of us were on a trip to Nebraska somewhere, and we were all the guys were scheming about basketball practice because we were being lazy and we didn't want to run, and we knew you're probably going to make us run. And we were all schemed, we're just going to quit. And only two of us knuckleheads did, Donald Dodds and I. We called, and I think you got a back-to-back phone call. And because I remember, so Justin Beerley and Dustin Dibble, after we did that, so I think you made their practice pretty hectic because you were pretty upset, and they had to do a lot of extra running, so they gave it to us pretty hard. But that, I remember, I was so disappointed in myself afterwards, and I didn't think about it before. I'm a young, dumb kid. And, I was so disappointed. Like, I remember the next year, I remember making a comment. Of course, you get these from kids all the time. I remember coming up to you. I think it was after football season.
Mm-hmm.
We had just played Eastern Heights, and I think I had a bad game or something. But I came up to you and I said, basketball season's coming around. I'm gonna work my butt off for you, because I felt so disappointed in that previous year. I don't know if you remember that at all.
I remember a little bit of it, and I think probably what really bothered you about that deal, we always had that rule, you go out for a sport, hey, finish it, just like anything in life. You're going to do something, finish that task, do the best at what you can do with what, God gave you the talents, so make the best out of what you can. And I think what really bothered you about that deal was in the back of your mind, you knew you weren't a quitter, and you didn't want to. And you looked at that as, was that a crutch that you could just use and get by? And I think that was, kind of at some of your times, and I think it's a lot of people, they use too many crutches to get themselves through. Well, I'll just use this as my crutch today, or tomorrow I'll use this as my crutch. And in the back of their minds, and I think in your case, it bothered you for quite some time, that you knew that, hey, I want to get through those things and quit using those crutches. So, your junior year, you decided at that point, hey, I just will man up and keep going. And, and I think that's a lot of the success to you, to where you are right now. And I think that's a lot of the successes to people in general, whether, just general population or whether they're coming through the foster care, the choices that they begin to make. When does it make that impact for them? I'm going to kind of interview you here, I guess, a second, but, that choice of making that stance that says, hey, I don't want to use a crutch. I want to get going forward, and I want to, be looked upon as I'm not a quitter, and I want to make my right choices for me. as somebody making them choices for myself. And I think that day, right after that football season, I think that's when you kind of made some choices that, hey, you know, let's get moving here. And yeah, maybe it didn't help your ACT score or anything like that, but you know, I think, you know, you could probably answer that question. You know, was that some crutches that you used just because of the atmosphere that you came through and came from? And was it at that point that you decided, hey, let's get things going in the right direction? And I truly think to this day, that was probably some of the time when you know, your junior football season, your junior basketball season, going into the summer, you know, I think you went off to boot camp right before your senior year. I think that was all a nice blend for you to get you going in a direction that that you chose. And you know, that's so many things that, you know, people make their choices. And I think at that point in time, that's when you made a great choice. And you know, I think the Beanhoff family really kind of helped you solidify that choice and kind of got you going in the right direction.
And one of the things that I really think it was is, so after I made that phone call, like before I made the phone call, I was like, yeah, because it was a crutch, and that's something, so like my brother, he still has those crutches. But before, no one checked me on it. It was like I could just quit and yeah, everything's fine. But I made the phone call, and I could just tell the disappointment, and then I knew I was like, oh crap, I got to go to school the next day. And if I had a normal situation, like going back to family, it would just been nothing would have happened. But you guys didn't stop talking to me. You didn't stop, like, I mean, you were upset and you should have been, but you kept on me. Like, you didn't just ignore me. It's like, okay, you don't want anything to do with it. You're out. But you stayed on me, and the whole community. Like, I remember the high school, like all the other guys, like, I mean, Dustin Dibble was the worst one about it. He gave me a hard time, which he should have, and that's when they still call me All-American or something.
Right.
And it bothered me so bad, but it made me want to like reverse that decision, and I couldn't, you know. And that's what eats at me. It's still like that one right there. There's specific things we obviously remember. That one there, right there, eats at me. It's like I always think, how could I go back and change that? But then I wouldn't have learned that lesson, I think.
Yeah.
But you would reinforce that lesson, like you didn't let me go, you know, fine, it's over. You're going to make sure I knew it was the wrong decision, but you're still going to stay on me, you know. And that's what I think the key was. People didn't do that before. They didn't stay with me. You did, and I think.
And you know, that was one thing. You know, like I say, I came up here in 1989, and that was one of the things I truly enjoyed about this community of Kensington. You know, the old saying of Kensington on the radio. When I was, you know, growing up in high school and college, I'd always hear the Kensington Locker advertisement. You know, they'd always finish up the biggest town of its size. Well, that never made any impact until I moved up here. And the biggest town of its size, it didn't mean population. This community up here, it was the biggest town of its size because of its heart. And you know, the thing that I guess really stood out to me about this community was they cared about everybody. And you know, I still see that to this day by living back in Hill City, that you know, our sports teams compete against each other. I get back here every so often. The community up here is just outstanding. The things that they continue to do, you know, like their old-fashioned Saturday night, you know, it's just, the community up here, you know, like some of your other interviews that you've had today, whether it's foster care system or just community, you know, children within the community, everybody looks out for those kids. And, you know, that was one thing I found when I was up here for my short 11 years, you know, it was, this community had an outpouring respect or care for everybody. And, you know, it was left, right, north, south, it didn't matter, you know, the farm community up here, the business community, it was all intertwined. And, you know, I guess so you go back to the biggest town of its size was because I would say this community probably had one of the biggest hearts of anybody, of you know, communities around. So
you know, I've never thought about why it was called that, but that is perfect, and it definitely is the biggest heart. And you know, one of the things that I am probably the most proud of in my life is that I was a gold bug. You know, like nobody, you know, you go leave, you know, I traveled the country for the military, and gold bug, what's a gold bug? You know, like, hey, I'm a gold bug, like no one else is a gold bug. I'm a gold bug. Like it's powerful. And it was, you know, I even like I had a T-shirt made the other day just so I can have a Gold Bug shirt. You know, I was so mad at when I would move around, I lost my football jerseys, and then I was able to find them. But in the meantime, like my wife actually knew how much it like hurt me. She called Mr. Weens and like to get an idea where to make them, and she had a new Gold Bug jerseys made for me. And then I luckily found the older ones. But I was so proud to be a Gold Bug. You know, it was so powerful. So
you know, it was just like driving in here today, and a lot of times, you know, driving into Kensington, you know, getting to come back here, probably like yourself, getting to come back here, you know, you're always a Gold Bug. And what is it? You know, a lot of people always ask you that. And I guess one of the things today, you know, coming back to town, you know, talking to Deidre Doherty, you know, like she mentioned her family, they own the locker, and a great, you know, tribute to our military, to the United States. You know, they have that huge flag over their locker. Awesome. And, you know, over the locker plant there, and, you know, coming into town, you know, just to say everything, you know, just to build upon what Kensington really stands for. You know, you come up over the hill, and there's really two things that you see as you come from the west going east, coming up the hill out west of town. And it really, today, I don't know if it was coming to do this interview with you and being proud of your successes and getting to share in that today, but for what the people of this Kensington community have provided to people like yourself and to the other kids within foster care, and plus their own children that they have provided for in this community that I've been associated with since 1989. Today made a very, very big impact on me driving in. That two of the first things I saw coming to town was the American flag that up at Kensington Locker. And the other thing was the iconic black and gold water tower.
Yes.
And I was like, it's like coming home. And, you know, to listen to the stories today of, you know, like the Panners for what they have done, for what Marla and Deidre have done for foster care. Mr. Yoxel, you know, his family's been very, what do you want to say, instrumental in the foster care origins of this community. You know, he gets to deal with it every day through being the superintendent / principal here. You know, getting to listen to Mr. Weens, and then of course Mr. Beerley, you know, all the things that he's done for foster care. You know, that just goes back to the heart of this community, and, you know, the heart of the community, what I got to see today coming in with the American flag and the iconic water tower. It just, you know, it makes it pretty special what foster care has done here in Kensington, and, you know, I guess it makes it pretty special that you were able to come through this also.
Yeah, this whole thing is, yeah, this is pretty special. Just seeing everyone, talking to everyone here, and like this town should be thanked. Like, it's awesome. The only other thing I see when I come in, I don't know why it sticks with me, the Hesterman house.
Yeah.
So maybe someday I'm gonna force him to come on the show. But no, that's powerful stuff. And again, I'm, you know, same with Mr. Weens. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, that was instrumental stuff, powerful stuff. And I think we'll conclude the show with that. Otherwise, I think you and I will probably start crying or something. We don't want that. So
well, I'll do your wrap up on this one. How's that sound?
Perfect.
Well, I know there's probably, I hope there's military, former military, current military probably watching this show. Jamie, I understand you're working towards captain.
No, major.
Major.
Well, I just got picked up.
Okay. So being still active military, to all former and current military, thank each and every one of you. Thank you for everything you've done for foster care. And last but not least, God bless the USA.
Perfect.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.